Hey, what is up? What is up? YouTube gaming family, it is K right here, back with another good video for y'all today. And yeah, I got another pretty good video for y'all today. And yeah, let's get right into it. So, yeah, I'm going to be talking about a pretty good video topic for y'all today. Be sure to like, rate, comment, subscribe, and shout out to Box and Fight Simulations. I got a little Terrence Crawford video. Well, it's not about Bud, but Terrence Crawford is fighting Joe Calzaghe in a what if boxing simulation. But definitely go check out Boxing Fight Simulations. He's a really good YouTuber. I love watching him fight. I was actually going to talk about Fight Night Champion, where there was a rumor talking about a mod coming to the game where a group of modders are coming together to build a boxing like modding game simulation. Well, it's basically like a mod for Fight Night Champion where you're able to like basically like play the game. I'm not too sure how it's gonna work, but it's basically going to like add an update to Fight Night Champion. It's gonna be a modded version of it, and I would hope that it could be like available for like the PC and all consoles. And but I'm hoping like they could probably like add more to it. They could add like all the updated fighters to the roster, or they could also add female fighters, to the roster and kind of like do something like that. You know what I'm saying? Like that'd be pretty cool. But I'm gonna save that for a different video. For today's video, I'm gonna be talking about another libertarian pep talk type of video. And this video is actually pretty interesting. For today's video, we're going to be talking about I guess like well, this is gonna be more with like senior living housing and disability housing that's administered by like I'd say like government institutional bodies per se. And I'm just gonna give you like my take on it, because I think overall like the concept of it, it seems okay, but it doesn't seem to be really effective, and it's really I think it's kind of like a little bit, it's a little bit crappy in a way. But I'll just kind of like give you my thoughts on it. So yeah, let's get right into it. So here's my take on this. I think like senior living housing is a great idea to help people that are old that need a place, to stay. And as far as the housing situation in America, it's very difficult for people to afford a place to stay. And I understand like people that are disabled, or they can't work, or they have a senior well, let's just say they have a senior disability where they're not able to function as a senior adult, where they're able to have their own home, where their family can take care of them, and then they're able to kind of like live their life however they want. Well, that's where like the senior living homes come into place, where institutions, get involved to help seniors to live somewhere where they're able to like live their life. Wait, hold on. Let me pause. All right, I'm back. So yeah, just to kind of like make it easier, like there is a means where seniors are in a position where if they're not able to live their life effectively, in a position of where they're having to deal with not having to afford like the concept of them being um sustainable, because their own family is not around for them, so they have to kind of live with what they have around them to kind of utilize some form of senior assisted living housing. Then they take advantage of it. And to the most part, a good portion of institutions are good out there, but other places are probably not as good, because they don't really provide like the proper assistance with people that are purely disabled, that are a senior. So it's like if they have like, let's just say, breathing issues, or they have sightseeing issues, and they're not really able to kind of like work and be effective, then I can see that part. And this is where social security comes into the picture, where it's very disingenuous of how people defend social security. But like for seniors that receive like SSI or SSDI, basically whatever that they get, because it's like Social Security is fixed income that does not provide everybody the right income for them to survive, and it's not livable. So it's like, the whole problem with Social Security, that's a whole rabbit hole that I have to like explain of like why it's why it's economically evil and why it doesn't help nobody, because it's gonna leave your next generation of children to be dead broke and poor. So it's like you're not gonna be seeing that money by time when you hit 65 or whatever the retirement age in the US is, because I'm not going to see that. And I'm 30 right now, but I'm trying to get all the money that I can get. But there's no way that anybody with a stupid brain is going to say Social Security is going to still be there by the time when you're in your 60 something, year mark as a human. So I don't see that to be a thing. I think that's very disingenuous to even say that. So yeah, let me get right into it. When it comes to senior assisted living housing or people with disabilities like myself, which I have lived in a pretty stable HUD subsidy level apartment housing, which wasn't always the best because some people had some really messed up issues, but it wasn't always that messed up. It was actually pretty stable, and I had a pretty good life living on my own 4 or 5 years. And I still do live on like my own. Like I have like certain family that I actually get with to have like my own little spot. But I'm still in the process of trying to get like my own property. I wanna get my own house soon in the future, but knowing how about the housing market is in America, it's pretty difficult of like where it stands. And I think it's not that good, honestly. I think it's getting worse over time. So I just don't know how that's gonna be in the future. But I would really hope that it doesn't have to be like that. And I'm probably gonna make like a whole video talking about that because it's pretty bad, and it's a very socialistically corrupted where there's a lot of really bad things that could really spiral out of control that people don't want to see. That's like Great Depression level shocking to probably see. So I will say that in terms of like where things are at, in terms of like just housing alone for people that are disabled or that are senior disabled learning, I think in terms of how the state is getting involved in terms of like how they're operating, people to, find a place, to stay. And then it's not always effective because, depending on where you're at, like it's not going to be, it's not going to be catered to like your living standards. It's going to be catered to everybody else being rationed a place to stay in a home, development. And then those seniors or those people with disabilities have to kind of stick with it. But it's like if you have like a problem with something that you don't like, and therefore that's going to affect you in terms of like where things are going to be, then it's not really like effective. It's a really crappy type of structure to kind of put people together that they're not really too keen to be around with. And that's always like the bad thing to deal with. So I don't think anybody wants to see that, and I don't think anybody thinks that's a effective means to operate within a society. So I think personally, like when it comes to just like anything with senior housing or people with disabilities to find housing, I think housing should obviously be left to a marketized manner where businesses can get involved to help people get homes. But homes should be designated to you. A home should not be designated to a group of people that can collectively do whatever they want to do. And then there's certain favorites within the housing institution. Well, housing company that's being administered by like a governing state body that can just tell people like, hey, if you have a senior disability, or if you're, hold on, let me get this ad. All right, I'm back. So yeah, basically back to what I was saying. Like when it comes back to like anything with senior disability living or people with disabilities, most likely mental or learning disabilities. It's usually dealt in a sense of where when the government gets involved, it's a really bad concept of which you have to deal with the case of having to wait in line and get your opportunity to kind of get a place to stay, and it's never to be guaranteed if you're going to ever have a place to stay, because something could always spiral out of spiral out of your own control, where you have to probably wait longer to even be accepted within a certain housing development, versus like if it was just simple and companies were able to kind of just give you a place to stay where you're able to kind of pay into like a property that you can like buy into, and it was like dirt cheap for you to afford it. That would be good. Like that would be a good way to like kind of like promote more housing for people that are middle income or maybe like low income. But in today's structure, especially in the Western world, especially in the US, there's way too much socialist policies that are, like I should say, they're destroying the US. A lot of people are struggling to kind of get to where they need to be. So therefore, your average, you know, I like to say like socialist milk toast, American per se, that lives and dies off of, the welfare state. They're very dependent off of social services, to the point where they think that social security and all these services are so great for them. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really help you, because that money that the state is getting off of other people, they could very well turn that up against you to say that we're going to limit you based off of how much you're going to own. So it doesn't mean that you're going to be having as much resources around you, because those resources can be cut dry very quickly. And like I said about Social Security or any other like DSS, related, well, no, Social Security is federal, but like if I just add like the DSS, related services like cash like assistance, or let's just say, fucking like what, like excuse my French, like food stamps. You have temporary assistance for like home energy assistance programs, right? And then you also have TANF. That's TANF. That's temporary assistance for needy families. Like, I mean, I get it. A lot of people like to bring like the stupid like argument to say like, what if I'm too poor and I'm not able to afford for myself type of individuals. You cannot make like the argumentation to say that if you're struggling and you're poor, you need to steal money from other people in order to live, because you're a human type not you're a human type nonsense. Because what you're implying is that you are not, like you're not capable of having to work for your own money to keep the wealth that should be yours, and therefore you should not even be robbed through taxation for you to even own your money more, because it's like that's really where the root of what the problem is. Too much socialism or too much welfare statism leads to the degenerate mindset of stating that you don't want to work hard for yourself. You want somebody else to work their butt for themselves, and then they have to get taxed out of existence for you to get basically basically scraps. You're fine with getting breadcrumbs when other people are getting steaks, salmon, and ham, and all these luxurious, wealth that they're able to get because they worked hard to where they need to be. But the problem of what the manner is that when it comes to wealth, discrepancy, when it comes to inequality, which I need to make a video talking about inequality. I'll probably do it after this video, and I'll probably talk about my social security video. But when it just comes to like where people come from and how people raise their families to be successful, or some people that don't care to raise their families to be successful, that's where the wealth disparity comes in. Because if you don't raise your family to be successful, your family will always continue to be beggars and to be dependent off of other people. Therefore, you're violently telling people what to do, to say that you need to give me this because I need to live, and therefore if I don't live, then how will I survive type nonsense. Like, I'm not going to be able to afford rent if I can't have my money be stolen from you. And that's just like that's exactly what it is. It's a fisherman argument, but being reversed to say that without this, I can't live, so you need to give me this, because if I can't live because you're not giving it to me, then therefore, you're the enemy and I'm somehow the victim. When it's clearly the other way around. You're the enemy trying to be the victim, and you're playing the falsified nonsense of stating that without this money, I can't live to be effective. Hold on. All right, I'm back. So yeah, that's pretty much it with that. But to finalize my whole argumentation for this, if you really do think about it, like senior assisted living or any like means of disability related living, whether if you're mobility impaired and you can't work, or let's just say if you're like a person like myself with a mental disability and you have the means to be qualified for like low income, driven assisted living, where it's like a HUD subsidy apartment living, where a lot of people get mixed up with this, but they think that the government owns those type of buildings to administer apartments, because that's not really true. Like, if you really do think about it, like the whole reasoning behind it is that governing institution bodies work with those companies to offer HUD subsidy urban living, you know, um, urban living, apartments for people that are able to get in to those apartments where they have to apply, and then therefore there's a apartment landlord manager to a degree where you pay the rent to the apartment, complex. Because if the government was to own the property and you're having to just live there because the government quote unquote owns it, where the government, they can't really own it because they're not a person. The government is a collective of people that cannot own a property due to the collective running the, like, basically running the apartment complex, because that's not true. So the state has a contract with a business to state that we will give you the opportunity, or we will give you this contract to administer HUD subsidy HUD subsidy apartment housing to the people of, let's just say, Brooklyn, New York, or wherever you're at in the U.S. or wherever you're at in the world. Which I'm just gonna specifically use the U.S. as an example. That means that with the amount of living essentials that are being given with HUD subsidy housing, which for the most part, it's a pretty decent deal to get out of it, but it's basically like a scrap type of thing that you're kind of getting out of it, because it's very crappy in the sense of not everything will be great, but you have to kind of live with what you need to live with, because if you're able to kind of live decent on your own and you have like the living essentials for you to kind of do what you want to do, then that's up to you based off of what you want to do. So that's really like the whole concept behind it, because HUD subsidy housing is, it's basically like supported living for you to kind of get what the benefits of you not having to pay as much, but it's based off of your income. That's really what the problem with that. And for people that are seniors, or they are elderly people, or people that are elderly disabled that they can't work anymore and their mobility impaired, those people are obviously dealt with at the more harsher part of having to live, because one, those people are on social security, disability, or social security alone. So the amount of money that they have available to them, they're not able to kind of keep anything together. So they're on a fixed income where they're barely able to hang on. So they're probably having to use that money to pay for their electricity, to pay for their rent, where but the rent is probably maybe like, I'm gonna just probably use like a random number. Let's just say that the rent is at least based off of their income, where the social security disability is covering the amount of money of like what's able to be covered. That would be at least, let's just say, like $500. Let's just say social security only gives you at least let's just say $1,000 to $1,500 every month. So with Social Security, you're having to live with that type of money, and you're not able to really get much out of it. But if let's just say if you're not able to work and you're not really able to get any money out of that, where like your only means of even making money could possibly be online, where you could go online and actually go to sites that could actually pay you money, which on my own side, spare time, like I actually do go online and make money online through um I think it's like certain websites like user testing and like market usability, research, testing sites that can like pay you, actual money for like taking tests online. And you could also do like interviews online. Like there's like a whole bunch of sites that I go to, which like I'm not really gonna disclose that, in a YouTube video because it's like I don't think it's really worth me explaining that to people. But there are sites out there where you can make wealth on your own on your side, as a side job, which you know I would hope one day, there could be a future one day where if you're able to make money doing simple things, like let's just say if companies were to like pay you to make YouTube videos just talking about life or anything like that, or let's just say you got paid for like watching TV or giving certain reviews for like what you like to do, like that'd be pretty cool. Like if you had like opportunities for people like that were like obviously elderly and disabled, where they were able to make like a little bit of extra cash, but it was actually like good reliable income where they're like making like a good like let's just say like $1,000 or $2,000 more every week. That'd be pretty cool. Like that would be cool if companies were to offer something like that. Obviously, it's not always available because most people are like well, I mean, to one, not a lot of people are very smart, and not a lot of people want to invest themselves to like learn new skills so they can like actually get themselves out there to make more money. So it's very disingenuous out of people to not look into that. So for people that are living off of scraps through the state or the government, like they're having to kind of like live off of what they can, and then they just kind of do what they do because it's like if they're too lazy to go out of their way to kind of do something about it to kind of make their life better, then it's like there's really nothing that you can really do for those people because that's on them if they make that decision to state that I'm fine having to live with less than like $2,000 coming in every month, and I'm not too sure how much money will be applied for me, but it's like it's not something that I want to live, but it's like you're doing it because that's your only way of actually making money for now. So it's like until something changes where let's just say if you got like if you won lottery and somehow lottery changed your life, that's going to make your life 10 times better. Hold on, let me pause the video. All right, I'm back. So yeah, I was just making like the argument, sake to say like, if you won lottery and your lottery winnings change your life to the point where you're able to kind of like live your life lavishly, but let's just say if you're being smart with your money, and you bought yourself like a cheap housing property to kind of just live in like let's just say some U.S. state that's like dirt cheap to be in, and you don't have to really deal with like all them crazy property taxes and all that. I mean that would be pretty dope if you did that. I mean personally with me, like I'll probably just leave, let the U.S. and I'm going to like some country somewhere in Central like America. I'll probably go out to Belize or something, or go out to Mexico, and I'll just be chilling out in like some area where I'm not having to like really be in contact with that many people. I'll probably go out to like Diamante or somewhere like that. So I don't know. I'll probably just go out to like some good U.S. state, maybe like Georgia, or yeah, definitely move to some state where it's dirt cheap for getting like a good house and just kind of like sit back and chill. But that's just me. So if that happens, I'm not gonna say anything, but I'm just gonna say I'm living my life, and I got to where I got to where I need to be, and I'm gonna enjoy what I want to do to chase my dreams and use that money to, do my boxing content and obviously just go out to events and just have fun you know, like super rich or something like that, or and I'm able to just do whatever I want. But that's like a whole different story. I'll probably talk about lottery, like you know, lottery. I guess like you know, pep talk on that. I'll probably do like a video off of that one day. So yeah, I mean, back to what I was saying, like getting housing is obviously very difficult because there's like a lot of government interference against it, and it doesn't really give you the opportunity as a person that is a housing seeker that's trying to seek long-term housing, where you're having to deal with the means of trying to be in a good position to be financially stable. So it's never always available for you to get those opportunities for you to live because you're having to wait in line like everybody else if the state is having to get involved with a lot of government red tape to make it harder for you to get a home. So even when you even have those people that are like very like they're very poor people that are like from like the very like homeless type, that are very ghetto driven, or they just don't care to even like work at all because you know they've already went through like the means of just going through their own life and actually trying to work and trying to be a better individual, but then they just give up and then they end up just choosing to be homeless. That is, you know, that is a very sad story. And you know, with that you know, that is a choice that people do make, that don't choose to be responsible in life, and therefore they don't choose to turn their life around so they could actually get to a better stage within their life. So they're putting themselves in a much worse position of not even being proactive enough to even get to a higher level of success. So personally with me, like in a world where you had like free marketized housing, you know, under a libertarian mindset, like if businesses were able to help people get housing, but housing was a lot cheaper, where there wasn't a lot of government involvement to even make it harder to have housing, where housing wasn't being subsidized by all these crazy taxpayer subsidy programs that were making it far more expensive to even build a house in, let's just say, some really poor ghetto area. Let's just say over in New York. And in New York, you know, you have like a lot of bad gang driven ridden drug crime infested areas that people just choose to just, you know, run rampant, you know, criminal I guess influences, you know, within a really poor neighborhood that people just don't care to even fix. And then the government is saying like, oh well, guess what, you know, like we're trying our best to get all these bad people off the streets, but these people just don't want change, and that's on them. But we're gonna try to, you know, utilize as much government subsidy taxpayer money to try to fix, you know, the problem. And then if we do fix it, then you know it's only going to be a fix for people that want it versus people that don't want it. And it's like, I think it's really stupid because it's like it's a very disingenuous thing to kind of to disincentivize people into wanting to do bad things, to not want to be, you know, sustainable, and they go out of it their way not even wanting to fix their own life. So it's on them if they choose to like seek housing for low income opportunities, where if they're choosing to be a bad, you know, renter or tenant, that's going to be on them to to brutally affect their living standards, and that's going to make it harder for them to even wait. Hold on, let me pause. All right, I'm back. So yeah, based off of what I was trying to say, like there's a massive discrepancy that creates out of people that do wanna live, you know, in a good peaceful neighborhood, and they want a good steady lifestyle that doesn't affect them in the way where they're not having to deal with a lot of problems that are going to hold them back. So the only way that has to be resolved is that you have to give people, well, not even give people need to have the ability to take control of their financial decisions, of having to invest in good properties to live in. But businesses need to have like the ability to trade opportunities with, you know, possible homeowners that can be trusted, where if these people do want to live on their own and they don't want other people living with them, where they have like a small house to live on their own, obviously, like if the housing market wasn't purely rampantly destroyed by government involvement and all these crazy red tape, regulations were just gone out of tomorrow, it'd be far way better for you to own a house in today's standards in the US, where the cost of housing would be far more cheaper. And let's just say like a house would cost like no more than like a couple $100. I'm just making that up obviously, but I'm just saying like think about all the inflation that people had to go through even to even get a home in the first place. And then you have all these people in America that have homes now and they could barely even hold on to their own home. Like I'm not saying like a lot of people are in that position, but it's like the people that are middle class or even rich, those people clearly know what the game of having your house is very vital, but it's very risky to have because it's a very hard investment to keep when you have to like keep your house in good shape, and if you can't afford it, then you have to end up selling your own house because obviously when the state gets involved or government gets involved to make it harder for you to own your home with all the crazy property tax influences that are having to be put with a lot of US states, it's bad enough for you because it's like, you can't really do anything about it when the government puts a lien on your home and then the IRS wants to be like, "Oh, well, guess what? You have to get kicked off the street because you didn't pay $50 of your property tax," like that one man out in Detroit, Michigan, and he loses his home. I think some 50-something-year-old man. I forgot how it all went down, but he later like I mean, I could probably talk about that one day and just give you my reaction to it because I find that to be so disgusting that nobody wants to like wake up into the mirror and actually just understand that there's no benefit in government interference in housing at all, and no governing nation state should ever tell you that you need to lose your home and you need to get permission from a governing, institutional body for you to have a permit to own your house. That being paying taxes every year for property tax, thinking that's a benefit to society when it's really not. And who is society? Society doesn't benefit nobody. Society is not something that exists. It's humans that exist, and there are communities that exist. But you cannot say that society exists. Society is just a concept. Society is not a pure reality. So that's just basically how I see it, man. I think eventually the future will get better, and I hope it does because I would like to see a better worldview of decentralized housing. Because if it was better within this generation of where I live, where housing was a lot cheaper instead of more expensive, then I wouldn't need to have this conversation. Like there wouldn't be no reason to explain the economics of like why housing is so expensive and why things are the way they are. Because if that wasn't to be the case, then I wouldn't be here. And how certain socialists like to say like, "Oh well, economics is just made up," as if like, "Oh okay, well guess what? I think I could just steal from you, right? Because there's no concept of inflation, so therefore there's no scarcity. So I guess I can steal from you." So I'm gonna talk about that one day. So you guys have my word for that. So all right, I'll see you guys later. Yeah, this is a pretty good video. I was kind of happy that I made it through this whole fight with Crawford versus Joe Calzaghe, which I don't think Calzaghe is like a really good fighter of his own right, but he was good he was good and okay back in his day. So yeah, ah man, Crawford. Yeah, Crawford lost in this one, but yeah, I think Crawford would have beat him back in his heyday. So all right, yep. I'll see you guys later. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys enjoyed this, little simulation. Shout out to Box and Fight Simulations. Go subscribe to them, and I will see you guys later. I got more videos coming out. And peace. And I will see you guys soon. Bye.